Having arrived, we'll call the meeting to order. Roll call.
Commission members Brown, Fuller,
Present.
Harris,
Present.
Kerr,
Present.
Little,
Present.
Madrano,
Present.
Chairman Mercy.
Present.
We have a quorum.
Okay, thank you. We'll start as protocol with invocation. We have Pastor Pat Tanner of Biblical Counseling, Grace Chapel of Lancaster.
The origin of justice. And Father, we just give you thanks. I pray for great wisdom for the reports that will be made today, Father, that they would not only be timely and true, God, but you would bring wisdom and allow us to know what you would want us to do, how to act on them. Thank you, King, for these people, for their hearts toward justice, toward your people. We pray in your name, and amen. Thanks.
Commissioner Little, would you lead us in the pledge?
Sure. So please approach the flag. Hands over your heart. Repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, we have a presentation by Mike Cooper on California Municipal Compliance Consultants.
Good morning, everybody. I'm going to report on the last 90 days of our activity. I'm pretty sure most of you know now that as the contractors, we basically California Municipal Compliance Consultants. We work with the city's public safety unit, and we advise them and consult, and we're a hands-on group, and we work with the resources that are available, the Sheriff's Department, public safety, code enforcement, and we basically work on quality of life issues. In the last 90 days, our company, working with public safety personnel that are assigned to us, along with two deputies that are assigned with us, dealt with approximately 868 total issues or incidents. 307 public contacts were made, 159 of which were homeless people in encampments. We inspected a total of 64 homeless encampments. 39 were cleaned and eradicated. 345 tons of refuse was removed. In addition, we issued a total of 64 administrative citations. These citations are administrative in nature. They have nothing to do with the court system. They don't go to the courts. They don't go to warrants. These are strictly administrative citations. 36 were issued for shoplifting at the various stores around, and 28 for disturbing the peace, the majority of which were at local gambling facilities that we dealt with. Utilizing the Sheriff's Department marijuana enforcement team, we targeted two illegal marijuana grows. One was a commercial building, the other was a private residence. The commercial building yielded 2,036 plants with a final street value of $1.6 million. Also recovered 200 pounds of finished product that was valued at $300,000. The second location was a residence in Portofino Heights that yielded, believe it or not, a private residence, 1,246 plants. Final street value of $978,000. 80 pounds of finished product valued at approximately $120,000. Two arrests were made at those two locations. Using our assigned deputies, public safety officers, and parking enforcement together, we conducted two vehicle registration operations. These are if you all recall, about a year ago, the state changed the laws regarding, dealer plates. When you buy a vehicle that doesn't have a license plate, it used to be a paper plate with the dealer's name on there. And for many years, people that didn't register their vehicles used those to just hide the plates, their expired plates, so they wouldn't get pulled over. And it worked pretty well for them because deputies or police officers, they couldn't stop a vehicle strictly for having a paper plate to check the registration. It had to be another violation. So several people would just cover up their expired tabs with these paper plates. Well, now when you buy a new car, you get a dealer plate with it's a paper plate, but it's got a number on it, the dealer's information. And actually in April of 2019, the grace period ran out for those. So you still see cars driving around with these plates on, and basically what they're unregistered vehicles, and they're hiding. So December, we figured, 11 months was a pretty long grace period. So we conducted two operations targeting those cars. In those two operations, 94 vehicles were found to have expired registrations over 6 months, some of them 2 or 3 years. So 94 vehicles were impounded during those two operations. The registered owners of which would have to go to DMV, bring their registrations current in order to get their cars released to them. In addition, we inspected 15 illegal gambling operations, commonly referred to as tap-taps. Those are businesses that they get a business license under the ruse of being some sort of an IT computer repair or whatever. They like to go into small shopping centers, black out the windows, and they bring in these gambling machines. They're called fish machines. They're about the size of a pool table, and you can have a total of 6 people, playing at these things. You buy credits, and then you win games. You earn credits, and then you get the operator at the end when you're done to pay out, just like Las Vegas. They attract a really bad element. We're constantly getting, complaints from other legitimate businesses in these centers saying, the problems that these places cause. They generally open late, they stay open late, and they attract criminals and thugs. We've done, at least in the last 18 months, we've probably done 10 of them. Several times we've taken guns out of the locations. We've had parolees, armed parolees in these locations acting as security. So, they're bad news, and our commercial crimes, task force downtown, they're looking at them also. So we're going to ramp up this year, 2020, and go after the rest of these. There's still at least 7 or 8 operating that we intend to get. At the two that we went to, the 2 that we conducted, 3 people were arrested. 8 gambling machines were confiscated, and these machines cost anywhere between $8,000 and $12,000 a piece. And 3 people arrested, and 14 others received administrative citations for disturbing the peace in the shopping center, which is basically what they were doing. 50 Comcate cases were received. These are cases that go into the city's complaint database program that every day, people, they log on and find out what these specific complaints are, and we go and handle them. We received 50 of them and cleared 49. 29, what we call service calls, were handled in the last 90 days. These are problems and complaints that didn't go into the Comcate system that were sort of immediate. Somebody calls public safety on the phone, something's going on at the moment, and they dispatch us, and we go out and see what it is and deal with it on the spot. 29 we received and handled to conclusion. And those are, the basic stats of of what we did. I do have a little presentation I'm going to show you of the homeless encampments that we go to. These things are just seriously bad, unhealthy. It's like a landfill. In November, and on a positive note, in dealing with the encampments, we had a female that was camped out at 62nd West and Avenue J, out where the new K&B stuff was going on, and she was mentally ill, not in her right mind. She wouldn't give us her real name. She didn't have any ID. We didn't know what to do with her. She wasn't apparently a danger to herself, but with colder weather coming, we went out several times. We tried other resources. We tried Adult Protective Services from the Sheriff's Department. They couldn't help. We tried the mental health team, the Sheriff's Department, didn't meet their criteria. The Homeless Coalition went out and talked to her, but she refused help, so their hands were tied, and we were sort of at a standstill with her. But two of our guys are Dan Hunt, who works for us now, he's a retired detective, and Josh Wagner, the public safety officer. They went out, and somehow Dan was able to get her real name, and from there him and Josh did a little investigation, located family members in Bakersfield who had been looking for her for about 3 weeks, and they came down and picked her up, got her truck out of Hawk, and took her back, and all turned out good. That had a happy ending. And that pretty much sums up what we're going to do. How do I work this thing?
Make sure it's on. So you should right arrow over.
Okay. There we go.
I just want to thank you for that. I know, as we face a lot of issues surrounding helping the homeless and making sure that residents, homeless or in homes, are safe in the city. And it shows a great deal of compassion by the city staff to make that extra effort and help someone in need.
And thank you for that. And we do. We try as hard as we can. Every person that we talk to out here, we give information to, numbers to call. Every site that we go to, we notify LASA and tell them this is where we've been, this is how many people are out there, and they will go out and visit. Because, frankly, for everyone that we can get except a shelter is one less place like this that we have to deal with. We do empathize with them. We wouldn't want to trade places with them. It's cold. We feel bad for them, and we try and get them help. We don't just go in and throw them out. Those are a few of the places that we have been to and done. They can really acquire a lot of stuff in a short amount of time. It's the area right behind the McDonald's on Avenue I. Sometimes they'll.
Is that the spots that are in between the freeway and the Valley Central Shopping Center?
Yes.
Yeah.
This is basically across behind on the east side of the tracks with the Metrolink station. We covered up the faces of if you notice, there's no bathrooms or outhouses at any of these places. They dig holes, use it for a while, and then they kind of cover up the hole. And believe me, you'll never forget the feeling when you step in one. Some have actually burrowed and built underground caves. You know, these obviously are a problem because if we get a large rainstorm, the drainage channels are blocked. And not only is that going to cause a problem in the, you know, with flooding, but, you know, it's going to drown anybody that's in there if it's sudden.
Mike, how many times do you go back to these same locations? I mean, it seems to be a round robin thing.
We probably have to go back every 3 months at least.
Yeah.
We've done these particular channels 5 or 6 times.
Do you guys check the registration on all the bicycles?
Anything that has a serial number, we can check. However, nobody ever reports their bicycles stolen anymore. So you can see the amount of equipment sometimes. More drainage channel.
Once a cleanup, Mike, is it when they come back? Is it less occupied? Is it just the same amount, or is it? I mean, you're going round and round and cleaning these.
It's usually not as big.
Okay.
We're slowly making progress.
Right.
Each cleanup is a little bit smaller than the last one. So, you know, little by little, they are making progress. Shopping carts and bicycles. Now, these shopping carts, they're like $450 a piece, and it's hard to get the stores to respond to come pick them up. They just don't seem interested.
So what do you do with the shopping carts? Do you try to recycle them, or you?
What they do now is they Public Works takes them. They go to the Public Works yard and they notify the stores. They hold them for 30 days, and in 30 days, if they don't respond, then they destroy them. They trash them.
I know a couple of years ago when I was on the planning commission, we adopted an ordinance to try to bring the business owners involved. Has that had any help?
Yeah, City Council adopted that shopping cart ordinance about a year ago. It took a couple of months for us to implement it because we wanted to notify all the stores that it was coming into effect and give them an opportunity to give us contact information and set up their retrieval and containment plans and so forth. Even those stores that have the electrical or mechanical systems, there are ways to get around that, and people do. But with the new ordinance in effect, and it's in compliance with state law, we can impound the carts and hold them. We can recover our costs of impoundment and storage from the store. This way, at least we get them off the streets and off the sidewalks, rather than waiting for a retrieval company to come pick them up or for the store themselves to come pick them up. And some, as Mike was mentioning, some of the stores just don't seem to care, but at least we're getting them off of the public property.
Thank you.
And there is a retrieval company, so to speak, that will pick them up off the sidewalk if they're in visible, plain view. However, they won't go into homeless encampments. They won't go down into drainage ditches because they say, hey, that's it's just one person, and he can't get his truck down there, and he doesn't want to be accosted,
Do they impound, you see a lot of RVs out there, and I'm assuming a certain portion of them aren't registered. Do they impound those, or what percentage of them are registered where people are actually living in them?
Some are, currently registered, and they'll be given if they're on private property, they're given the choice. Say, okay, look, your vehicle is registered and it's running. You need to, remove it. If it's unregistered, if it's inoperable, it can be impounded for either one of those violations. So we try not to impound, RVs. The tow companies will do them, but we'll work with them if they need to get a battery or if they need to do something to get it running, to get it moved. We'll give them an opportunity to be able to take it. Some of them are just, they're missing major part. They'll never run, and those we'll remove.
What percentage would you say were actually licensed and running vehicles, and people were actually that was their mobile home, and they're actually moving from spot to spot?
We actually we don't see that many RVs. Probably in the past 90 days of all the encampments that we did, there was probably 6 or less that were actually living in an RV. Narcotic paraphernalia is, when you get the close-ups, it's a big thing. We find it all the time. Homemade bongs, needles. And we actually have 3 boards of this. This is just one that we took. These are things that we find in the encampments. That's why we kind of go in force and we're very careful. And we do have deputies that accompany us that are just there for our protection. And that's the end of that. And
that was all 2019.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And how many encampments were there?
For 2019?
Yeah, I mean, the slide you just showed us, do you have an idea how many encampments there were?
I'm gonna say that I don't have that exact figure, but over 100.
Thank you.
And there's more, Mike, out there, I'm assuming, right?
Yeah, we have a crew out there all day yesterday.
I know.
We were doing them yesterday. We're doing them today.
I see you guys
tomorrow and Friday.
Phenomenal work you should do. Incredible.
And just a note on that. That's their primary mission right now has been for some time since we instituted that contract, is dealing with those quality of life issues that relate directly to the impact of these encampments and on the community. And so that's been part of the focus. As you'll see that Mike demonstrated, this has been a really great tool for us to deal with a lot of issues that primarily before were being managed by the Sheriff's Department, and it's not manageable, compared to everything else that's going on and based on what is taking place out there, and then the collaboration with the other agencies that are involved. And so these guys are more on boots on the ground, that day-to-day interaction with those agencies out there. And then, there's a lot of groups out there that are putting out certain propaganda that we're operating in some things that are, whether they're questionable within the law or not. And we're absolutely within the law. We provide appropriate notice based on the law. Even like with the drainage canals and everything like that, with recent case decisions, people can't be in there ever. Okay, and we still go through a process for removal that's not even required. So there's a lot of issues there that are on the human health and safety aspect of this, as well as the calls that we field daily into the public safety office regarding this issue. So we're going to keep moving forward. I'd like Mike to come like every quarter, like he's talking about the last quarter of 2019. He can bring forward information for the commission. And then, of course, if there's anything else you'd like to see that they're doing, just ask us and we'll address it.
And we do, I probably imagine here, we follow a procedure, all the encampments. Again, like I said, we empathize with them. We would like to see them get shelter. But to be honest, 90% of the ones we deal with don't want to go to a shelter. They refuse to go to a shelter, mainly because shelters have restrictions. There's rules they have to follow. No loud music, drinking, smoking, drugs. Males and females are separated. They can't take their animals, and a lot of times that's a deal breaker for them. And being an animal lover, I sort of see that. But the folks that we deal with out here, they've been offered shelter over and over and over again, and they have no desire to really go to the shelters. There's different tiers of homelessness. This is the lower tier. There's other homeless people that are actually working, have jobs, have cars, that are living in their cars. They were evicted. They're unfortunate circumstances. Those are the ones that are in the shelters, trying to get back on their feet. They're the ones that Kensington's going to be a godsend for. But we post each location 2 weeks ahead of time. After we post, loss of visits, we do a courtesy call 48 or 24 hours before, saying, okay, you remember, we're coming. They're going to be here on this day. Make sure you get your personal property. Get out. We bend over backwards to give them all the chances.
I'm driven by these encampments at nighttime, just driving through the city, and I've yet to see a fire. And I often ask myself, how are they able to stay there overnight without a fire? I mean, it gets to be freezing temperatures here.
They start fires, believe me. I don't think we have a fire department representative here, but the fire department is constantly responding to fires in encampments. They've responded to several in the drainage areas, but I hardly a day goes by when we don't copy over the sheriff's radio a fire call for a fire. So they do. The fire department does respond to fires, probably because you don't see them. But not only do they have to respond to fires, but they have to respond to medical emergencies out there. They're, one of their issues is having to drive their fire equipment out in the desert areas. But fire department responds to fire calls constantly. They respond to medical calls constantly. The sheriff's department responds to calls for assaults and other crimes and thefts. So these are a total drain on services all around.
Where do you need help at, Mike?
Excuse me?
Where do you need help at? I mean, obviously you're out there in the field constantly doing this over and over and over again.
Actually, we're doing pretty well. The public works crew are phenomenal. I mean, it's unbelievable the support that we get from them with their equipment. They're very good at what they do, and actually I don't think any more can really be done that's being done right now. We have our people, we have our the public safety officers, the posting, and the public works crew is like I say, they're phenomenal. We use a prison crew, a prison inmate crew, and between the prison inmate crew and public works, and we're much better than other cities. I mean, if you watch the news and you see city streets filled with tents, and other cities are letting this completely get out of hand. Business owners, or some cities are citing business owners for not cleaning up messes that are created, by this. I think this city's staying ahead of the game by doing what they're doing, and it's a health issue, it's a safety issue, it's But I can't think of anything that, anymore that we could do. They're on top of it, and it's working well.
I commend you. Incredible work.
Okay.
Thank you, Mike.
Thank you. Excuse me, for public business from the floor on each item, any person who would like to address the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission on any agendized items is requested to complete a speaker card for the commission secretary and identify the agenda item you would like to discuss. Each person will be given an opportunity to address the commission at the time such item is discussed. Speaker cards are available at the rear of the chambers, and your speaker card must be filled out and submitted prior to the agenda item being called. We respectfully request that you fill out the cards completely and print as clearly as possible. Following this procedure will allow for a smooth and timely process for the meeting, and we appreciate your cooperation. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each unless a different time limit is announced. Moving on to consent calendar items 1 and 2. If there is no objection, we are requesting to table these until our February meeting. Are there any objections to that? Hearing none, so ordered. So we're on to continued new business item 1, continued discussion regarding any comm project and the camera surveillance policy and possible recommendation to the City Council. We do have 3 speaker cards. John Eakin. Oh, come on up. Oh, I have a few more.
Mr. Chairman, I think it would be appropriate if they spoke after the presentation.
Is there a presentation, or is it just our continued discussion?
I think Mr. Cottle actually wanted to. Did you want to circle back? Yeah, Mr. Cottle wanted to make a few comments, and then
I apologize, sir. We're going to have the presentation. That way you can hear that before finalizing your comments. Thank you very much.
Just a quick follow-up of where we've been, where we're at, and where we're going from here. If you recall, we've had a presentation in front of your board, a traditional board meeting. We also had a town hall meeting in which we invited and solicited a number of different comments. This is the opportunity for you to make final adjustments to the ordinance or the policy, and then refer that to the City Council for approval, denial, and changes. One thing that through the conversation that we identified, and I'll be happy to answer any specific questions, but one of the questions we identified through the process and through the hearing process was we needed to add a section. I believe you have each of those in front of you. There's a comment that relates to the use of the camera facilities or the equipment. That'd be for the evidence of criminal activity through the process and community outreach and some of the process and feedback we got from you. We'd like to change and add footage that may assist or add in addition to criminal activity, footage that may assist with disaster events and or defense of litigation and traffic-related purposes. So it broadens the use of the videos for other things besides criminal activity. That's the only change we would recommend you guys making at this time, if I'm correct.
We just wanted to clarify that the retention rate, I guess you want to say, is 28 days. It was originally written to be nowhere between 30 and 90, but the technology only holds it for 28 days. So we've just revised the policy to reflect the reality on the ground.
Yeah, and those changes are in front of you. I'd be happy to answer any questions from the Commission or the public.
I had just one question in reference to the term various vendors. Who are we referring to? For whatever reason, I thought it was one vendor. So when you said various vendors,
correct. There is various. So depending on how the systems work, the vendor who's providing the camera feed and the camera head is one vendor. What we do with that analytics of that feed may come from alternate vendors, including in that is maybe a weather station that might come from an alternate vendor, traffic counting that may come from an alternate vendor, license plate reading may come from an alternate vendor. One vendor is providing the video feed. What we do with that video feed could be provided by third-party vendors.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Mr. Cottle? Okay, we'll move on to public comment. Mr. Eakin?
Thank you. This is my first time to one of these things, so
well, thank you for coming.
Interesting. I appreciate what you do. Great. My question is about the vendors. I want to know how they hope to recover their investment. I think we're getting this for free. So, which begs the other question: when we get data from them, or I guess we're being charged for that, and so I wonder what that charge would be. I don't want our data to be held hostage. So I don't know if that can be answered today or some other time, but that's it.
Well, Mr. Crump. Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, next, David Paul.
Chair, Vice Chair, Commission, good morning. The room has changed, hasn't it? It's a different feel, so just wanted to get that out. You know, I like the idea of the cameras. It's pretty good. But I have to tell you all, the reason I got involved in city politics and just paying attention was because of traffic. I lived in a beautiful new subdivision where people would drive down my 25-mile-an-hour street at 60 miles an hour plus with my toddlers playing in the grass. And so that made me look into why we can't, and I know the Sheriff's Department doesn't have the resources to patrol every residential street, but this camera gives us a real chance. The other day, my one son is out skateboarding, and here comes one of these crazy people. There's two parked cars, there's another car coming, and he's blowing by there at 50, 60 miles an hour right through my stop sign. And so I would like to know, the other day I was on Avenue 10th West there, turning west on I in that double turn lane. There was no one there. It was at night. And I'm just turning, and some maniac has come screeching around that corner, nearly clipped me. And, you know, as a citizen, you talk about quality of life issues. I would like somebody to do something about that. And yet I know that nobody can. These cameras actually give us a chance. So help me out. I mean, if we're going to look at stuff like that, you want to improve quality of life, let's stop some of these crazy drivers from putting me at risk. That's the worst thing I have, is someone hitting me in one of their crazy motor vehicle stunts. So let's think about that. I don't know what we can do, but let's put our heads to it. That would make me very happy. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Paul. Robert Teller.
Good morning. I have a few questions and a couple of statements to make. Why do we need this in Lancaster? Why do we need this service? I don't quite understand why we need it. This is not a high crime city. I think maybe Denver, Colorado, Philadelphia, and Chicago would be more appropriate for this kind of action. First of all, I want to know what it's published in the Valley Press that they would get a percentage for employing these cameras. I want to know what the actual cost in money to the taxpayers is, because the city has no money. They get it from the taxpayers. And I'd like to know why we're doing this. So in truth, this is a violation of a federal right to privacy. I'm not doing anything criminal, but I still don't need it to somebody looking at my license plate or seeing that I may have pulled out too far out of a driveway or something like that. That's not a crime. That's a mistake. So I don't think we need cameras to spy on people, and that's what it is. They're spying on people. And the other thing is, if this is just for traffic control, why is the Criminal Justice Committee giving this presentation? I don't understand. Would it not be transportation giving that? So are we spying on people for criminal activity that may or may not exist? The next thing is, does anybody have a security clearance? Either a basic security or top secret? Because I don't find that this is secure enough. I worked for the United States government on an airplane that could take a picture at 85,000 feet and tell you what kind of cigarette you just lit. That's how they got Che Guevara. I think this is an invasion of privacy. The United States government does not use it on the citizens. They use it in foreign countries. That's how we knew where the guy just going to the airport was. And so I don't think we need it in this community. I think it's a waste of money and time, and it is in violation of our federal right to privacy.
Okay. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Preston Clark.
Good morning. I don't have a statement to make. I just had a couple of questions concerning the equipment itself there. I was wondering if anybody knows what the angle of view of the cameras is that's we mounted on top of the light poles there. Can the degree of the angle be widened or narrowed? Can they be disabled? You know, that was just what I was curious about there. Thank you. That's all I had to say. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Arthur Calloway.
How are you guys? My name's Arthur Calloway. I'm an IT manager at Northrop Grumman. I do have a top secret security clearance, and I have some concerns and wanted to give get some comments and questions answered. So I've went to J, and between J and K on 50th Avenue, there are street lights that look like they're owned by Lancaster. I got a laser measure and measured that it was only 55 feet to the house. It was in view of every single back window for at least 6 houses down, which means that there's multiple angles that are pointing into everyone's back windows on that street, and it's the only street I surveyed, which means that the camera, if the specs are correct, can see 100 feet into the house and read to a 2-inch to 2 inches letters, like if there was a license plate there, and if that was reviewed and understood when y'all are making the deployment schedule. I also wanted to know what are the security precautions that were being put in place to secure the data at the facility itself, the server room. Do they have a cybersecurity program? I also run about $30 million worth of equipment with Northrop doing the cybersecurity protocols to make sure privileged users that need to see the video only get to see the video, or that the general users can. If there's two-factor authentication, like what is that process at their facilities? Has it been tested for failure rates? The actual software that they use with facial recognition, has it been tested for failure rates? It is known across that it is bad at understanding the difference between minorities and women. So then false identifications can happen, and there's actually auditors that say whether this software can pass a tolerance level for that. Has that been done? What are the mitigation tools put in place to alleviate the false identification of confusing me for another black man of the same age that looks around the same build? Also, what are the reports from the other cities that used them or decided not to use them? Has that been done? I haven't heard anything when looking at the town hall. Also, they were talking about, ANICOM was talking about moving their headquarters to Arizona because that was the first city that was supposed to be deploying it citywide. Why would they need to move from San Francisco to that city? And if they deploy somewhere else citywide, would they have to move to this city? Can I get one more question? Yeah. And also with that, the person that said about multiple vendors, he's talking about multiple. In your policy, is there a policy of chain of custody so that when the video comes off the thing, then it goes to the person that's collecting the video stream, then it goes to the license plate person so that we know that it hasn't been altered from end to end? And I would like to do one thing, which is offer, because of I know that the culture of this city is that y'all don't like people coming up here just to complain, and I'm not complaining. What I would do is offer my services to go to this site and do a site survey and see if they're following two-factor protocol authentication, and see if they have the privileged users, see if they use the JSIG, which is what you have to use in order to do cybersecurity, to make sure that this video is going to be secure, especially if we're looking in the bedrooms, and we don't want that information to make it out past and just anybody be able to do it, and there's a Eric Snowden type situation.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, does he have his contact information on his card?
Actually, if we could get your contact, I see your phone number here, but is this it? Well, yeah, we have his phone number.
Okay.
I'll do another card and give you my email address, phone number, all that stuff. Because I'm serious. I'll fly to San Francisco and look at that site to make sure that that's good, and then do a full report back on my.
That would be great. Yeah. So I think what we'll do is connect you up with staff afterwards to discuss what we could do and answer the other questions. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Cottle?
Thank you, Chairman. I'll try to go these. I don't know if we're going to keep them in order, but I'll try to answer all the questions. The equipment, just to understand what we're talking about, what we're not talking about, the equipment has 3 cameras, 1 facing the street and 2 facing each side of the street. The intent is to video the public street. It is from what I understand, it's 150-foot distance that we have the capability to. They are static cameras that do not zoom. Obviously, the analytics, once you get the feed, you can, physically zoom, but it doesn't. We can't control the zoom from some remote location. Does that make sense? It is a recording device, right? We have the ability to look at it live, but there's 80,000 cameras that we anticipate deploying, so we will not have the staff necessary, or anybody would have the staff necessary to look at 80,000 cameras. We anticipate using them as from a criminal perspective, if a burglary happens, right? We have the opportunity to go back to the camera, draw the feed, and investigate a crime. We have the opportunity to listen. So if there's a gunshot, we can go back and capture the video out of the camera and look for the gunshot, look for the car accident, look for other things of that nature. So this is a recording device. We can look at it live, but we just wouldn't have the personnel to do that at this point. So it is an after-the-fact video of the camera. From a traffic perspective, we can place traffic counters on those things of that nature. That'll be happening on a continuous basis, but it will not be on every street light. So that's generally how it operates. We intend to look at it for what is visible in a public space, right? So from a privacy perspective or federal privacy laws, it is what is to be determined as a visible from a public space. If your bedroom is not visible from a public space, we don't have the right, or you don't have a belief of privacy. If you're in the public street, it is a public street, right? We have the ability to video that. We have video cameras currently all inside City Hall, outside City Hall, and all of our parks. So video technology is nothing new. The reason we're having this conversation is the magnitude of the video that we'll be taking is a different in a community conversation. So we currently have video operations throughout the city, including on the boulevard. As relates to the technology, be happy to, any insight to the technology and things that you'll be happy to hear. The way it's getting funded is so that the cameras are secondary to the system installed on the light, right? The first and primary focus is Wi-Fi communication as well as telecommunications and delivery of cellular service, 5G Wi-Fi or 5G cellular service and 6G Wi-Fi. The cameras are an ancillary service associated with that. The revenue that we'll be getting, so this doesn't cost the community anything, it is a revenue-generating opportunity, is the cellular companies who contract with Anycom will be paying Anycom for the use of that service to deliver their cellular coverage and their Wi-Fi coverage. And we share, estimating right now, about 20% of that revenue. The total cost of implementation is about $25 million. Anycom will be servicing that obligation. It will be no cost to the city, only revenue that we receive from the city. We're currently negotiating how we access the data and who pays for that and how we value that. And that'll be a fee for service of some kind that the city will control at the end of the day. When at a previous meeting, somebody asked, well, who's dumb enough to pay you money, right, and then upgrade the system to make sure it serves this type, it sounds far-fetched. Except for the fact that we do it today, every day, right? We have long-term leases on our parks facilities for the big cellular towers, right? This is no different than those relationships. They pay us money to lease our facilities. This is very similar in as that structure. They are just happy to be leasing the top of our streetlight for a smaller facility or for smaller radio towers. So this is not, groundbreaking. It is just a different technology to implement a similar service that's already being implemented. From a traffic safety perspective, David, we are in the future coming to the City Council with a traffic safety program. I think David will be happy with that. Does it involve the camera system itself? Not necessarily, but it'll involve, from a speed count and a traffic count perspective, allow us to identify those streets that have safety issues and then mitigate against that through enforcement, engineering, or design. Why do we need this service? Well, like I said, first and foremost, it's an increased telecommunications portal. So we have greater Wi-Fi service, we have greater cellular service, which is important to the community. The cameras are ancillary to that service. Can we turn them on? Can we turn them off? Absolutely. So if at some point in the future we determine that the cameras are not necessary, the AnyCom does not need or want or care about the camera footage. They care about the cellular traffic and the Wi-Fi traffic through their device. The camera service is a service that we care about. Not only is it a revenue opportunity for the city, from a criminal perspective, the certainty of apprehension is important to us, so that when we do have criminals thieving against our citizens, that we have a greater opportunity to catch them. Regardless of whether we consider ourselves a high crime community or a low crime community, anybody who gets burglarized, anybody who gets their car stolen, anybody who gets their car broken into, wants to make sure they find the bad person doing it, because it's not likely the first time that's been happened or first time that person has done that. It's likely more than one time, and it's not going to be the last. So by catching these folks, we protect our citizens, which is our responsibility as a community. The opportunity to use this for emergency operations is important too, from a safety, from a protection perspective. The opportunity to identify homeless camps before they become problems is an opportunity. The ability to identify traditional illegal dumping sites is important to us. So there's a lot of uses that we get out of these video cameras, not to mention the revenue and also the enhanced telecommunication system. Facial recognition, we don't have any facial recognition system. Like as we mentioned today, the policy is about the camera and what we do with that video footage. The camera it does not have facial recognition within inside of it. As we talked earlier about the third party, the video or the facial recognition and any other service that comes associated with that is a third party vendor who does the analytics of the facial recognition software. We do not have facial recognition software. This is not contemplated in this policy. If we did facial recognition, that would be some other policy necessary. It does not keep us from doing it, but we don't know of any technology that we would have, possess, or even be able to operate in that setting, or have the capabilities to operate. What else do we have? I think I covered most of it. Unless I missed something, I'd be happy to answer any other questions.
You want to talk about the geo-netting and looking into the bedroom windows?
The way the system works is it is designed to look at the public space, which is visible to the public. The geo-netting allows us to communicate throughout the community, so each one of these streetlights will be communicated together. But I think the key is there that we're not using this to spy on people. Right? We use this, and anything that we capture is required to be public record, so that when we look at the public record, if we are capturing video and making it of the ownership of the city, and it's not for criminal activity, it is public record. So people will have the ability to identify what we're looking at randomly, right? If we're not looking at it associated with a criminal activity. If it's associated with criminal activity, the chain of custody is going to be such, I did skip that question, the chain of custody is going to be such that the Sheriff's Department will retain ownership of that, our Public Safety Office will retain ownership of that, and the chain of custody will be protected. So that we identify that in a court of law, that we can determine how that was captured, who had it, how long they had it, what was done to it, etc. I don't know if that answers your question.
I think one of the questions we were asked is that, like the gentleman brought up a point as far as saying that if the streetlight's across the street and it's shooting across 50 feet to a residence, does it stop at that public thoroughway, or does it continue to go the 100 to 150 feet onto property?
No, you will be, the way it's designed is that there are going to be overlapping, right? It's not going to stop at the potential right-of-way line, right? You're going to see past the right-of-way line. The question becomes who is looking at that? Is it visible from a public street? So and I think Dr. Brown brought this up at our last commission meeting, is that you can be on a public street, Lee, the sheriffs, anybody else, and what is visible from a public street is visible upon a public street, right? So the camera is not going to see anything not that you can't see from a public street, right? If your blinds are closed, if you can't see it from a public, we're not going to be able to see it either. Does that make sense? Is that the only thing we're looking at is the public street. We're not looking at anything else or what's visible from the public street. And it is our intent, and of course intent goes a lot of ways. We're not spying on people with, not the intent to spy on people with this.
I think the general question is if you're looking into, you're just not standing on the street corner looking into it, you're up on top of a 35-foot pole and you're looking inside someone's backyard. The geonetting allows us to block out from looking inside the house. So when the gentleman talked about looking inside a house, we can identify things inside someone's house, is not true. We have the capability of stopping with the geonetting to stop from looking inside the homes. And the other question was we don't get to use U2 cameras on the top of the poles. So these cameras have to be available to the general public. So for us, that's my understanding of the law, that it's have to be available to the general public. Any camera that you look inside or over a fence with, you have to use that. We went through that with LEAPs.
Okay. Any other commissioner questions?
Yeah, there was just one that I want just to make sure we're clarifying is that you talked about anything captured is for public record by the city of Lancaster. However, I think the other concern was what about Anycom and their storage facilities, et cetera. It's my understanding from the presentations is it that they don't routinely capture or store anything. Well, they capture. They don't store anything from those cameras unless it's requested, because each of those boxes themselves has a 28-day storage capability on a chip that's encrypted at military standards for protection of data. And so there would be no record of that in San Francisco, for example, some large database being created for these 80,000 cameras. Just want to make sure that I'm clear and the public's clear on that.
Yeah, that is correct. So the camera, each camera itself or each box itself has its own storage device. To access that storage device, we would request it as a city to the vendor. They would deliver that video to us, and we would house it in our local servers or local storage devices.
In the policy that we're looking at to either recommend to the city council or not, or with modifications today, also clarifies how that content could be requested by law enforcement agencies, and includes punishment for violations.
Correct.
So,
there is punishment. There will be not only criminal but civil punishment to anybody who accesses these cameras without the authority of the city.
okay, and then once you access that data, assuming it's not for a criminal investigation, which it has its own rules and regulations associated with it, it becomes public record. So if I wanted to put in a freedom of information request for my street and say, hey, I understand you're capturing this data, I'd like to see it, you would have to respond to that. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So, kind of to summarize what the policy does and what it doesn't do. What it does is when a police report is made or an investigation's begun and some sort of crime is alleged to have taken place in a particular neighborhood, the law enforcement can come to the city and say, hey, we'd like to get the camera records from this area as long as it was in the last 28 days. And that begins the process. That's the only way to access the data, correct?
Correct. And it has to be initiated by the city, or the sheriff's department would have access to that.
And what it
they
doesn't,
would request it through the city, but yes, they would have access.
And what it doesn't do is, and is actually forbidden under the policy and the law, is there's nobody sitting in front of a bank of TVs looking for a crime. It's only when a crime has been reported and then as part of the investigation. Correct?
I don't believe the policy doesn't allow us to do that. The technology limits the ability to do that. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. The bandwidth is not capable to deliver 80,000 cameras and to be spying, right?
Yeah.
Right.
Excuse me, Commissioner Fuller, if I can just clarify one statement that you made. If somebody is interested in footage on their particular street, they wouldn't come to us and request that. if they have a civil matter, for example, they could follow ordinary subpoena processes and go directly to the vendor, and the vendor would respond in accordance with requirements pursuant to a subpoena. But we would not be the middleman getting.
Right. No, I appreciate that, and perhaps I didn't communicate well enough. But I'm not saying that it wasn't my intention to say that someone could say, hey, I've got an interest in this footage, give it to me. But rather, if it becomes in the public domain, in other words, the city of Lancaster is gathering it, and it becomes part of your record, then I could say I'd like to see the record that the city of Lancaster has gathered, assuming it's not a criminal investigation and therefore protected in some other way.
Sorry, the mics are acting up. Assuming that there aren't any other reasons that it's not subject to production pursuant to the records request? Okay. There we go. Mystery solved. Assuming that there isn't some other exemption under the California Public Records Act that would preclude us from producing that, that's correct, yes.
Now, is my understanding is that once the 28-day period has expired, that video is no longer available anyway, anyhow.
That's correct.
Any other questions for Mr. Cottle? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, so this is on our agenda for discussion and possible recommendation to the council. We've heard public comment. Is there council discussion?
Well, this is at least the third time that we've discussed this. I think we've all had the opportunity to hear all the comments. And
Okay. Well, that being said, I think it's appropriate to entertain a motion.
would the motion is to that you're looking for would be to recommend this for approval to the city council as presented?
One way or the other, yeah.
Yeah, well, that would be my motion then.
Okay.
With the revisions that are noted on the marked up copy?
Correct, yes. What's sitting in front of us right now with the revisions on the footage, disaster events, and defense litigation for traffic-related purposes, and the clarification of the 28 days for storage of time.
Mr. Chairman, can you guys talk about the limitations for the criminal acts before you recommend it to the city council?
My understanding is we can only ask for it if there's a crime. An individual said if you saw a littering, I don't want it being used for that. I want it being used for littering. Can we limit the type of crimes to a Part 1 property and talk about that? Is that?
I don't think I want to limit just to Part 1. I want to be inclusive of Part 2, but maybe I see where you're going here, that you wanted on certain limitations for certain infractions or something as well.
To have the ability to say that that person littered, therefore we have access to it.
Oh, I get it.
Okay, so to the limitations of it, of what we need to do.
And that can certainly be the practice and the directive, but I don't know that you necessarily need to codify that in the policy, per se.
Here. It would be similar as like what we talked about. It wasn't committed in your presence because you saw it on a camera. It's an infraction. It's probably not appropriate anyway. So it would be something similar to Part 1 or Part 2 crimes, and of course infractions or certain municipal codes wouldn't be inclusive in that. So you would have to have the presence to be there as someone that's writing the citable offense, unless it was some exclusion as related to the type of crime it was. So we can certainly do whatever we believe is appropriate as a community and move that forward. I don't think the littering thing is something we would ever address.
I don't think that the current city council would, but we have to limit other councils or other people that might take over, and we have to look out and we have to give the citizens a certain amount of comfort of what we're going to actually use it for. So if we limited it or specified, not limited to, but specified what it is, maybe we could use that type of language. Just can you recommend that they figure it out before it goes to council, so we don't kick this back and forth at council?
Okay. So if you'll take that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, so then it would be to suggest to the city, pass this on for the consideration of the city council as amended in the copy that we have today that I stated earlier, with a suggestion that before it gets to city council, that the limitations are considered for what type of infractions would trigger accessing data or requesting that data. Is that good? Okay, that's the motion.
Okay. We have a motion, second by Dr. Brown. Okay.
Dr. Brown did.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Further discussion? Oh, yeah. Just to let you know, the vote buttons aren't working, so we're going to do when we come time to vote, we'll do a all in favor vote, voice vote. So further council discussion or commission discussion?
The 28-day period for keeping this information. We have 28 days, so if there's an infraction and there's somebody who wants to take action, they would have to take action before that 29th day.
That's correct. The reality is, in fact, one of the revisions that we proposed is for use in defending litigation, but it's very unlikely that we're going to know of a trip and fall, for example, or a car accident, a pothole or something like that would trigger a claim against the city. We're not going to know that in 28 days. So this, the footage has limited value, but limited in scope, quite frankly.
Now, is the 28 days, is that because the system can only retain it for 28 days?
That's correct. The technology in the head.
So it's nothing we could increase if we wanted to?
You have the ability to download the 28 days, right? Every day, download a day, and then you're actually adding a day, but there would have to be criminal activity identified. It'd be a unique circumstance. Does that make sense?
Yes.
You take it off the camera, and now we're storing it in-house. It's not on the camera.
And now it becomes public.
But then it becomes public record, or it's part of a criminal activity. So is there techniques to extend the 28 days? Yes. But the machine only carries 28 days.
Gotcha.
So
Thank you.
So on the 29th day, the 29th day information, it replaces the first day information.
That's correct.
But to my understanding, so the video shall be stored no less than 28 days. But say they upgrade it, in 6 months, a year, and suddenly it's got double, we would have access to that double time and wouldn't need a policy revision. Is that correct?
Technically, that's correct, but I think we would probably want to revise the policy to reflect the reality of the technology as it evolves.
Okay.
Was it what I believe before, wasn't it, Jason, as far as keeping that information, servers alone would be you'd have to have a complete different type of system. Am I correct?
That's correct. The value of the system is its decentralization, right? It's these cards that it's like an SD card in the head of it's like in your camera or in your phone. There's only want so much storage, right? The minute you capture that storage, then you own it, and the system is different. If you just decentralize it and it's up there and it disappears, as Dr. Brown says, there's no cost to us. There's no cloud exposure. There's a whole lot of things that are beneficial by having a decentralized storage system.
Okay, if there's no further comments or discussion, I'll go ahead and call for the vote. Seeing none, all in favor of the motion, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Motion carries. Thank you. See, moving on to commission staff presentations, updates, and reports. Starting out, Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Deputy Green. For those who do not know me, I am the Community Relations Deputy at Lancaster Sheriff's Station. Today I'll be presenting your Crime Commission report for the month of November 2019. We're going to start with our burglaries. Right now, in the month of October, we had 71. We were down to 65.
for the total amount of burglaries. Residential, October was 44. In November, it's going to be 34. And then for commercial burgs, we were up slightly. So it was 27 in October. We're at 31. For robberies, month of October, we were at 22. We were in the month of November, slightly up, 43 total for robberies. For armed, we were at 12 in October. We were at 17 in November. For strong arm, we're at 10 in October, and we were at 26 in November. Now, we do have, we know why this has happened, and at the end of this presentation, I will have my lieutenant go into further detail regarding the robberies. All of our stats that are given were done via social media. We use social media resources in Neighborhood Watch and Business for Breakfast. We had our community engagements in November, which we had Friendsgiving at the Mental Health America, which allowed us to actually interact with the mentally ill on a more positive basis. We also went to Gorman Elementary, and they had their festival over in November. And we have our Business Before Breakfast that we do once a month. We also had our town hall at Antelope Valley Partners for Health, which concerned any, citizens were able to go there and ask any questions regarding the city and information. LT, if we can give a little more detail about the robberies in November and why they spiked.
Sure. Good morning. Our robberies in November spiked, and our robbery team investigators and our LANCAP deputies were able to identify a crew from the area that was pretty prolific in robberies throughout the Antelope Valley. They've identified the 3 members of the crew and have put out warrants for their arrest and are still actively trying to find and bed them down and arrest them. The other prolific robbery suspect was a suspect that was using the Grindr app, dating app, and he was meeting up with potential dates, and then he would rob those people of their cars or their property. That person is in custody already, and I believe he is good for 4 robberies in Lancaster, and other agencies are looking to see if he's responsible for robberies in their jurisdictions also. So we anticipate the robberies coming down for December. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional questions for the Crime Commission report for November? No? Okay. We're going to move on to the Comp City stats of Lancaster. Bear with me here. Okay, Comp City stats for the month of November. Homicides are at 0, currently for the month of November. Rapes, we are going to be at around 8. And just to clarify, rapes, when they're reported, there is no statutes of limitation as far as time. So these could be delayed reporting. There is no serial rapist or anything like of that nature going around Lancaster. It's domestic related or acquaintance related, mostly when it comes to the stats for these. Okay, if there was any type of serial rapist, you would be notified of that via social media or whatever resources we have available. All right, for robberies, we're going to be at a total of 43 for the month of November. Aggravated assaults, around 35, down. 11 for domestic violence related aggravated assaults. Burglaries, we're going to be holding steady at 64. Larceny and thefts, we're going to be at an average of 150. Grand theft vehicle has gone up about 2. We're at 72 right currently, averaging 53. All right, arsons over a period. We're going to be in November. We're going to be down to about 3 for arson. And then these will be our hot spots for the month of November. Are there any questions regarding the Lancaster comp stats?
Actually, just more of a point and confirmation, if you would, in terms of the sexual assault numbers. With a lot of the progress being made over the last few years in terms of victim support, that increases actually don't necessarily indicate more crimes being taking place, but more people feeling comfortable coming forward and going after the perpetrators.
That is absolutely correct. Yes, we don't want to prevent them from reporting something that has happened to them over a long period of time, because as you get older, obviously you mature and you understand that something actually did happen to you, which is why they most likely remove that statute. That they never had it to begin with, but why they don't put a limitation on it, because sometimes you won't know and you don't mature enough to understand what had actually happened to you at that time. So yes, absolutely.
Sir.
Yes, sir.
6 of those reported sexual assaults did not occur in the month of November. They were late reportings.
Okay. So, great. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Next, we're going to go over our LEAPS presentation. Okay. During the month of November 2019, LEAPS was dispatched 143 times, totaling 29.7 hours, providing airborne tactical and strategic surveillance for 287.5 hours of the 94.5 square miles of City of Lancaster and surrounding incorporated and unincorporated areas within Lancaster, within Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department jurisdiction in the Antelope Valley. LEAP's real-time visual and infrared spectrum encrypted video capabilities provided airborne observation and support in the arrest of 35 suspects. Most aerial surveillance calls regarding suspect vehicles and missing person searches use object and or scene tracking modes and were conducted in desert fields or on off-street locations, providing situational awareness of possible suspects or vehicles nearby. All events involved in the LEAPS system visualizing the unfolding incidents on screen at the LASD Lancaster station immediately after LASD dispatched. It provided surveillance with the eyes of the events during recovery of 6 stolen vehicles, aided through searching for 3 missing persons, provided surveillance during the arrest of a carjacking suspect, assisted searching for a hit-and-run driver, aided in 3 attempted kidnapping calls, and provided surveillance in an animal cruelty call. LEAPS systems video provides local and or wide area situational awareness within minutes of a dispatch and often before the arrival of deputies or first responders. When dispatched, video is obtained between 6,500 and 1,500 feet above ground level, enabling identification of fleeing suspects and or event assets that provide invaluable information to the deputies and enhances the safety margin for those responding and collateral individuals. Video captured by LEAPS maintains the evidentiary chain and remains in control and custody of LASD, is archived in LASD facilities hot online for 2 years for immediate access. At LASD direction, with duration, it is further archived to offline storage for litigation usage. The American Civil Liberties Union was presented with a Lancaster team pre-design of our LEAPS project with its concept of operation and gave the city Lancaster its approval, since it does not infringe on the civil liberties of our citizens under that structure. While LEAPS was active, 51% of these stats involved people, 14% involved property, 19% involved vehicles. Sorry. So you can see it. There we go. 51% involved people, 14% involved property, 19% involved vehicles, 30% involved arrest and led to arrests and detentions, and the other 33% were observation only. Do you have any questions regarding the LEAPS process? All right, that'll be the presentation for today from Lancaster Station. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Probation. Welcome, sir, and Happy New Year.
Good morning and Happy New Year. How you guys doing? Good. December is usually normally a very quiet month for probation. So I'm going to kind of give you some of the stats that we have that were available to us this morning. And basically, very minimal crimes. What we deal with mostly in our business is the mental health aspect. We have a lot of people walk in on occasions that don't have appointments, that are seeking assistance to someone that they feel that they've established a relationship with. So it's a positive thing. So that's what we dealt with most of the time. So we try to put people in place that we can offer those services when they come in and they have a little more depression, more than normal, as we hear those statistics that come up. Some of the reflections based on our 2019 is that we were very proud of the fact that we added the resource fair that we was very successful. We're still installing our evidence-based practices in the majority of the things that we are doing. Our field visits are 90% in compliance, which means that we're getting a chance to see them face-to-face 90% of the time overall for the past year. Our caseload numbers are designed to be smaller so we can spend more attention because of a lot of the things that they require. We're still seeking housing availability, and unfortunately, I just got a call last week from a gentleman who has a house in Lancaster who's trying to make a contract with the County of Los Angeles to offer female housing. As of right now, we don't have any female housing to support them at this time. So the only housing available to us if we have a situation is in the Pomona area. So people that have family out here that may be support groups and stuff are being asked to move to Pomona because we don't have any housing to assist them and things of that nature. So that makes it a little bit more difficult. Last year we had approximately 40 early terminations from ours in following the law of AB 109, the state law. After 6 months, they're eligible if they qualify. We're very strict on the guidelines, and we try to follow penal code directly in line with what they ask for. They don't have to be superstars or rock stars, but they have to be in compliance in every aspect of their conditions of probation. And we take it a step further if they are having mental health issues and they have been ordered to have mental health treatment and counseling, that they are in compliance with that. That's one of the biggest factors. No narcotic negative testing or positive testing, I should say. They have to be in compliance the most. They can't have any outstanding restitution or any of those things for victim restitution in that matter. So we were very happy that we were able to have 40 people get back on track, get jobs, and do type of things that they want to do to not have a positive return to the community in the changes of behavior. We did, as I mentioned in the past, we acquired a motorhome or recreational vehicle that's a command outpost that we're going to be using out in the outlying areas. We're still getting that up to date and squared away. Safety reasons, we've taken it to Highland High School during their law enforcement day where they have a job fair and stuff, and it was very positive. Right now we're getting it detailed on the inside. We're making sure everything's functional, so when we do take it out to the community, our target for 2020 is to go Lake LA areas, maybe Little Rock area where we can have people that have difficulty finding transportation to meet their appointments, that we can go out to them. Some of the things that we talked about and spoke about earlier was the homeless encampments, maybe even that situation where we can go and offer them services where we don't want to send someone who has that situation back to jail. It's going to overcrowd them. And they're not causing any havoc in the community. They're just staying away. So we can get them to report and be in compliance and still get them to use our resources. We feel that the more resources, evidence-based practice has determined that if we are able to offer the resources, they use the resources, the opportunity to succeed is far greater than if they just show up and get nothing. Formal probation, which is at the courthouse for adults, is different than AB 109. We're much more intense. However, the evidence-based practice are now being installed over at the courthouse with the formal cases where they're going to have smaller cases, use more evidence-based, so a lot of these resources will be coming in effect. So it's a different clientele, but we're going to start to use that also. We also want to increase our field visits, even though we're at 88 to 90% overall. We want to get into that 95, 96%. The more people we come in contact that are on probation, the more chances we have of succeeding. And honestly, as sometimes our statistics and stuff like that don't show, they've done a really good job, but I think we've done our due diligence in helping protect the community and things of that nature. So it doesn't always go noticed until something goes wrong or you end up on the front page. But if you don't see us on the front page for months at a time, that means there's some good deputies out there doing their thing. So hopefully you can appreciate that. And that's all I have for you today. Any questions for me? Happy New Year. Have a great day. Thank you.
Thank you. Captain Bernier.
Good morning. First, I wanted to take a minute just to introduce my new lieutenant, Rudy Rodriguez. He comes to us from the Victorville area. Just started on the first of the year. Replaced Lieutenant Castro, who is now over in the Barstow area. And he's got about 24 years on the job, and I think he's going to do a real good job for us out here. So we're talking about the homeless situation, and so for our department, we work with Caltrans to clear the homeless encampments that pop up on the freeway right-of-way. Obviously, we've read different articles around the state where people are killed because cars are going out of control off the road, and then they run into a homeless encampment and somebody's sleeping in a tent. So there's a very good reason to remove it. We've been working with Valley Oasis, and we also notify the sheriffs to let them know when we're going to be conducting these operations with Caltrans so that they're not just moving from the freeway on the other side of the fence and then setting camp up there. And we're trying to direct them to the services that are available. So for the year, we did pretty well in a lot of ways. So these are annual statistics. It looks like for the arrests, we had 814 total arrests. DUI arrests in particular, we had 659, which is a increase of 13% over last year, which is definitely a good thing because at the same time we only had 153 DUI involved collisions, which is down 7%. So when you see arrests going up and the actual collisions as a result of the DUIs going down, it's always a good thing. Total enforcement contacts, 41,066, which is quite a few considering the limited resources we have and number of officers we have available. That's a almost 4% increase over last year. And we're working with less people than we had last year. So it just shows that they are out there working as hard as they can. Unfortunately, our fatal collision picture is looking identical to last year. Going into the month of December, it was looking pretty good, like we were going to be down significantly, but then we had a really bad month of December. So we ended up with the same total from last year, which was 41 fatalities in CHP jurisdiction. Motorist services, we provided 2,286, and a total number of traffic collisions for us was down almost 2%. With 1,800 total collisions in our jurisdiction. We did have that day where the snow caused a lot of problems on the freeway. And prior to the storm coming, we were prepared. We brought out our snow plan that we developed after, I guess there was an incident back in 2008 where the entire valley got cut off when the freeway was snowed over. So we made sure that everybody was briefed on what we're going to do to keep the freeway open. And I think we did a good job with what we had. We talked to Caltrans, and we were supposed to have 3 trucks available with sand and whatnot, but 2 of those got diverted over to the 5. We had an after-action meeting about that and the decisions that were made, and they agreed that the 5 freeway is going to shut down when the snow level gets to where it's at, and that's everyone tends to think about the 5 as being the most important route. However, since we're the only real good alternate route that I encourage them to just kind of realize the 5 is going to be closed and that they'll eventually get that open. But in the meantime, they got to prevent the 14 from actually shutting all the way down, which it did. Unfortunately, we had a fatal collision on the 14 that night, and we also there was a contributing factor was the ice and the snow that accumulated on the freeway. We also had another fatal collision on the 138, someone on a motorcycle trying to ride it in the ice, which wasn't a good idea. But so we did have a busy night that night. We were doing the best we could, but once those things happen, we have to divert away from running what we call round robins, which is where we just keep the traffic running behind us, escorting traffic through per se to keep the heat of the cars going over the roadway and not letting people just kind of drive at the speeds they want to drive, and then hopefully that keeps the snow from accumulating. But once we got diverted for all those collisions, then we weren't able to continue doing that, and with the lack of the sand trucks, it accumulated. So bottom line is Caltrans agreed they're going to divert more resources should the snow level fall again to where it did, and we should be able to keep that 14 freeway open. And lastly, our entire office came together, our non-uniform staff, our volunteers, both the senior volunteers and our explorers. A vast majority of our officers also dedicated and volunteered their own time to collect 8,711 toys, which we distributed to 32 local Antelope Valley nonprofits to help people in need during the holiday season. So with that, that's all I have, unless you guys have questions for me.
Well, thank you very much, sir.
Okay, thank you.
District Attorney's Office.
Good morning. So for the month of December, we filed 122 felony cases, 203 misdemeanor cases. Those are typical numbers that we've been handling over the last couple of years. There's some new laws that went into effect. I don't know exactly what impact those are going to have on our office. We'll see, and should be able to have a report back to everybody next month. But that's all I got for this month. Thank you.
Thank you. City Attorney?
Thank you. Good morning. A couple quick things. We have a few ordinances that are going to be revised in the next coming months that will be coming to you or coming back to you. First off, the food distribution ordinance. You will recall there was let's call it a lively city council meeting to discuss the ordinance. 5 hours is lively, I guess. We were directed ultimately, staff was directed by city council to coordinate through the city's Homeless Impact Commission and have meetings and discussions with some of the community members who made comments during the council meeting to both revise the ordinance in a light that is slightly more favorable and less distasteful to the members of the community that do like to help persons in need and hungry people, and also to come up with some strategies to better coordinate the city and these outreach communities to work together for some of these food distribution events that would be taking place in public parks, and provide some more resources, more trash cans, and so on. So we'll get going with the Homeless Impact Commission here in the next few weeks. I don't know how long that process is going to be. The ordinance was introduced by council officially, but they directed us to take up to 6 months to work with the community members and get the ordinance into a shape that was satisfactory to everybody. So that'll be an ongoing process. We've mentioned the rental housing ordinance. I'm still making some changes to that. That'll be coming to you most likely February. It might be pushed out to March. There are other things going on in the organization that sometimes push some of the ordinances down in priority, but that is definitely one of them. Also, Lee and I have had conversations with us and with our staff, as well as with Mr. Sherwood, concerning making some revisions to what we commonly call the Prop 47 ordinance, which is the Chapter 9.48 of the Municipal Code, which imposes administrative penalties, fairly harsh administrative penalties for state offenses that were covered under the Prop 47. We're going to expand on some of the state and local offenses that will be subject to those stricter administrative penalties and capturing some of those offenses in an administrative way rather than tying up the courts with some so-called low-level misdemeanor offenses. So that'll be ongoing. I don't know when we'll get that to you, but probably within the next few months. That's all I have for today.
Great, thanks. And that might be a good opportunity then to also have, I know I brought it up a couple of times about having some sort of educational forum for the public about the effects of Prop 4757 in terms of, and the policy that the public will be asked to vote on in November to repeal portions of that.
Which I'm happy to do, and I'm sure Mr. Sherwood has dealt with a lot of issues and a lot of policy changes that are ongoing continually within their office as it relates to both those propositions, 47 and 57. I will tell you too, also, within our world of moving towards divertible cases, at different various levels, and what's appropriate is a constant moving target right now. So for probation as well as the district attorney's office and the judiciary. So that's been very interesting. Just for me today, I have just want to remind everyone we have the consultants coming out for the council presentation for the hybrid model Tuesday night. The meeting starts at 5 o'clock. They will probably be early in the agenda, the presentation, and we want to make sure we invite the public out so people have a better understanding of the direction that the city, the council and the city are trying to go as it relates to complementary service to what the Sheriff's Department is already doing in our area to deal with some of the lower level quality of life issues. And I think we've come up with a pretty good program working collectively. There's continuing conversations daily on the implementation and what's going to be involved logistically as well as processes, protocols, procedures, all those things are being developed as we speak. Mayor Paris has given us a 6-month window of time for implementation, and that'll all be determined based on the vote of the council on Tuesday night. Secondly, is we're into our goal setting time again, as we've done each year, where I'll have Christy Slayton schedule approximately an hour of your time over the next 30 days or so we can sit down individually and discuss what you would like to see come from this commission this year. What do you believe the priorities of the community that you represent and how they relate to what we're doing, okay? So we can make sure that we're addressing issues appropriately based on the information you're receiving from members of the public as well as what we're receiving. So we have a much better coordinated effort and plan that over the next 10 months or so beyond that. That's really all I have today. I'm very excited about the direction we're going right now as it relates to all the things that are coming together from a public safety aspect. I think you're going to be very happy when we get the year-end results for our crime stats for the end of the year. There's some great work that's being done out there. And again, I appreciate the level of cooperation we have with all the agencies that are represented here as well as other representatives in the community.
Great. Well, thank you very much. For the state legislative update, I'll go ahead and switch hats real briefly and just let you know Senator Wilk has our bill on illegal dumping will be coming back up now that the legislature is back in session. It kind of got held over in Assembly Public Safety, so that'll be coming back up, and we're hoping to move that one forward. I don't have a report for Assemblyman Lackey, but I know he's continuing to work along those lines on the Prop 47, 57 issues, particularly in some of the real heinous crimes that were included there, such as possession of the date rape drugs being termed nonviolent and things like that he's continuing to pursue for public safety. That's all I've got there, so we'll move forward to public business from the floor, non-agendized items. This portion of the agenda allows an individual the opportunity to address the Lancaster Criminal Justice Commission on any item not on the agenda regarding commission business, and speaker cards must be submitted prior to the beginning of this portion of the agenda. Please complete a speaker card for the commission secretary. Identify the subject you would like to address. We respectfully request that you fill out the cards completely and print as clearly as possible. Following this procedure will allow for a smooth and timely process for the meeting, and we appreciate your cooperation. Individual speakers are limited to 3 minutes each unless a different time limit is announced. With that, we'll go ahead and get started with Heather Varden.
Hello. I just wanted to bring up LA HOP, which is a collaborative outreach service. It's for the Homeless Outreach Portal. It's an LA County resource that's available. It's if you see someone experiencing homelessness, you can submit a request through LA HOP, and that's a collaborative outreach with LAHSA, MHA, which is Mental Health America, LA Family Housing, Valley Oasis, and the Department of Mental Health. They have professional outreach available for substance abuse. There's RNs on staff connecting people to housing as well as mental health resources, and I do have some flyers for that available as well. And then I do also want to remind everybody that the homeless count is coming up. It's on January 23rd, 2020 at 6 a.m. You can sign up at theycountwillyou.org. We currently in the Antelope Valley only have 87 volunteers signed up, so it's really important to get more people to sign up and actually go out and do the count so that we can get resources allocated to this area to help solve the homeless problem.
Okay. Can you get that website again?
Theycountwillyou.org.
Theycountwillyou.org?
That's correct.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Christine Ashworth? Is Ashworth here? Okay. Tom Schaffner.
Good morning. I came to the City Council meeting about 7 months ago to ask for help with an issue that's been ongoing at the 2020 Hookah Lounge on 30th Street West and Avenue L. Since that date, I have gotten a lot of assistance from Deputy Jordan, from Mr. Dorico, and we seem to be at a legal status right now. The city attorney has been referred this information. However, the problem is ongoing. It's a situation that happens every Friday and Saturday night at 2 to 4 a.m., usually peaking around 3 a.m. People congregate in that parking lot. Dozens. In the summer, it was hundreds, so we documented that with video and camera footage. And anyway, we did see it decrease a bit, I think, maybe when the business was notified. However, it started to peak again. I thought maybe with the cold weather it would stop. However, drug sales are still occurring at a rapid pace in there. I do have documentation of the most recent January 5th parking lot situation. Dozens of people milling around, cars coming through, stopping for a second, people lean in, car leaves. And deputies have shown up. However, usually they'll recongregate. I have, again, documentation of that. There was a recent December 14th confrontation after the deputy had gone through the parking lot. Then several dozen people reappeared, had a confrontation. One pulled a shirt up, I assume flashing a handgun. There was a rapid retreat. I got some of that on camera, and then cars eliminated from the parking lot by the time I could get deputies there. That parking lot had been cleared because of that incident. This is loud noise, the cars with the boom, boom, boom. And this is 7 months of this where my wife and I wake up about 2:15 in the morning. I toss around thinking, am I going to have to get out of bed, get my wits together, call the sheriff? And I now drive over there, across the street where it's safe for me, and I try to document what I can. It's just... I know that extra patrols have been assigned, and I am getting responses where they do get there while it's still going on. It used to not occur so quickly. However, the situation in which I have to be rousted from my bed at 3 a.m. and deal with it has been ongoing. And I'm here to find out what we can do so I can get some relief. This business operates till 4 a.m. as an after-hours club. Most of the neighbors' backyards are from me to you. They're that close. So it would be like having a party house next to you that operates every Friday and Saturday when you're hoping to get a good night's sleep.
Can we do anything with the hours of operation?
Well, we've addressed that with the owner. We've actually cited the owner a couple times now for the chronic nuisance issue. But it isn't just, there's some contributing issues there. Okay, there's other businesses in there by days of the week that are open certain hours as well that create some of this attractive nuisance issue. something that we discussed. Actually, Lance has a number of calls for service with the response and everything that's gone there, so that's how we based that chronic nuisance issue. I think there's some other things that we've discussed that we can implement as far as working with the other businesses in the center, possibly some security that's put in there for a period of time, and then deal directly with that owner specifically he mentioned here. That stopped for a while we implement an agreement on a time, and then it's gone away again, and that's why this has happened. So we have the same issue with a lot of these hookah lounges that become some type of nightclub, okay, beyond the hours and we've dealt with numerous owners of those individual properties, and some have cooperated, and there was a period of cooperation here for a short time, and now we're back to it again. So we addressed it this last weekend with some additional resources we actually put out there on overtime, but I have some different ideas on how we might manage that more with the center's owners, okay, and some things that they can do to help us remedy this issue. Again, he's in a unique situation with that type of business where it's just right directly behind the residential property. The center itself, based on some of the hours of the other business too, is an invitation, maybe from after hours at other locations as well, for a place to congregate. So we'll address it more aggressively again, and I think in the future some discussion we might want as this body to make a recommendation, as we've done in the past. Some type of businesses require a CUP. They require a conditional use permit to give us more leverage to deal with those issues as they arise.
Yeah, what I know when that center went in, if I can have a tiny bit more time, when that center
Certainly.
went in originally, I was still a resident of that in that area, and we did get a lot of conditional use permitting. The McDonald's was only open until midnight on weekends, 11 on weekdays. They're the only business that's still open. However, it's drive-through only, so there's no reason for people to congregate. The rest of the businesses there are closed. The only business operating till 4 a.m. is that hookah lounge, and I spoke to them months back. That's not what would be open there.
No, there's another business that's open there depending on the night of the week.
Oh, okay. I thought other than
That's what I was talking about. We can address it with other businesses that are there.
Your microphone, please.
Sorry. And I'm not used to the new mic thing. Okay. So we can discuss some modification there. Okay. So Tom, and I'll discuss that with you. Okay, at large. But there is a real issue. Okay. It is a real issue. And so we're going to have to take some steps. The problem is it repetitive, the same people? And then the Sheriff's Department's dilemma for enforcement is you respond, you have these individuals. Who do you determine who's making the noise? And then how do you address that if it's not being committed in your presence? Remember, understand, because we're talking about misdemeanors here for the most part as it relates to that. So that's the issue. So I think the thing is we have to take a different tack from the enforcement side of it and move into more of a condition that we place there that doesn't allow for that activity. And that's really what we need to focus on.
Mr. Schaffner, if you indulge me, just a question. There was a time where that establishment was actually closed down.
That establishment closed not long after an individual left there on some very powerful drugs, broke into my home May 2017. I had a violent physical altercation. The deputies that responded prompted me through a citizen's arrest, and he was arrested. He admitted that he was last at that hookah lounge and was on some very strong drugs and didn't know what he was doing. At 4:15 a.m., that didn't matter to me while he was there. Not long after that, it seemed like it did close down, and we had some peace and quiet. It's reopened this year.
That's what I was going to ask. So during that period of time where it was not in operation, even though there's other businesses that are there
was no problem.
Okay. So that business in itself has an impact.
So question to Mr. So what you were saying earlier about the CUP, so do hookah lounge not require a CUP currently, or?
I'm sorry, it's been a while since I looked into it. I actually think that business might have a CUP. The conditions may not be as stringent as they should be, so it might be something that, and Lee and I will regroup on this and discuss it some further, but it might be that we need to take it back to Planning Commission to either modify the conditions of the CUP, or if it's bad enough, to talk about revoking it altogether.
Thank you.
30th Street West and Avenue L.
Yeah. In the McDonald's Center there on the,
correct.
Was that the northwest? Okay.
But under those guidelines, too, under those certain guidelines under the CUP, there should be something that states that even things at that period of time, congregating in a public parking lot is supposed to be prohibited.
Well, can we definitively attribute the people congregating in the parking lot to the hookah lounge or to the McDonald's or to whatever other businesses may be open at midnight? There's attribution issues.
Gotcha.
And I want to be careful because I know this is non-agendized, so, but maybe something we can explore later when it's agendized. Let's see, that's the last of our non-agendized comments, so we'll move into commissioner comments. Just want to start off, I want to thank the mayor and the council. I didn't realize until looking at the agenda that I'd been moved up to chair, as the rotation goes, and I want to thank them for the trust they put in me. To Mayor Parrish and the council, I want to thank our immediate past chairman, Jeff Little. I'm going to look to you for a lot of help, and you've been a great help since I've been on the commission, and appreciate everything you do for public safety throughout the community. And I want to welcome Commissioner Medrano to the commission, your first meeting, and look forward to working with you. And so along those lines, again, more to staff. In terms of CUP issues or anything like that on the hookah issue, or even if there's additional policies or anything we can do to help with the gambling taps too, because I'm hearing a lot of complaints about those in the community as well. They're just killing a lot of these centers that they come into. So anything we can do to help, maybe we can have a discussion. Any other commissioner comments?
Yeah, I'd like to welcome Commissioner Medrano as well. Welcome to this commission, and also acknowledge all the fine work that Commissioner Little did as our chairman, the leadership time that you put into it. Really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure working alongside you in that capacity. So thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay. Anyone else?
I'd also like to welcome our new commissioner. Look forward to working with you. Glad to have you on board. And Jeff, leaving as chairman. Thanks a lot, bud.
Thanks, buddy.
I'd just like to say that I'm honored to have been appointed, and I look forward to working with everybody here. Thank you.
Okay. With no more commissioner comments, having reached the end of our agenda, if there's no objection, we will adjourn to our next regular meeting Wednesday, February 12th, 2020 at 10 a.m. Thank you very much.